heard about or also used in some way or the other in your interactions with your clients, with your colleagues, and so on. So TKI, the full form is, of course, the Thomas Kilmann invention, and it's about conflict management. So if you actually ask me, there is no formal certification required for you to administer, use, and coach using TKI. Like you require formal certification for an MBTI or a FIROB administration. You don't technically require a formal certification, but I somehow thought that, actually learning it from the OPP people would give me some more insights than what I might have just gathered in my own experience. So that's how last year, or year before last, I attended the TKI certification program at London. And I thought I got something a little more than I was thinking that I knew. So even before and I have a very short presentation. I think it must be the shortest presentation that I might have ever prepared, or you might have ever seen. So just a few slides so that there's some visual to look at. I think my first question, and I think even 3-4 of you can just let me know. I'm assuming that most of you are on your coach training, that is your journey towards becoming either an ACC or BCC, and some of you may be already credentialed coaches. And therefore, I think our discussion would be almost towards the end, would certainly be in the context of coaching. But first, just understand what TKI might be. So I would just like to ask, and some of you, if you could answer, as to what is it that might have drawn you to this webinar when you read that this is use of TKI in coaching. What might be the driver that you really this 1 hour of your evening to this webinar, and what is it that you might want to take away from here? So any one of you, just 2-3 opinions, if I could get, I would get a sense of what you're looking at.
I'll go. Nobody's raises their hand. I'm looking at getting more knowledge in the coaching area, because I'm a novice and I wanted to pick as much as possible from as many people as possible. So that is one of the reasons why I'm here, to learn about a new concept, something that I've not heard of. And I am having my pen and pad ready. And of course, it's you, Jayashree, so I'm here for you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Okay, for me, it's purely my love for psychometrics. And so I'm certified on a few, and I think the more the better. So I've heard of TKI, don't know beyond that. So this is definitely a beautiful opportunity for me to get another perspective.
Fantastic. Which are the other psychometrics that you use normally?
I am certified on MBTI and DISC, and trained on 15FQ+.
Oh, okay.
I'll go next. Hi, Jayashree. So for me, coaching has made me very curious. So I'm generally curious about everything, I guess. So TKI is a new topic for me. I don't know anything about it. So I just got very curious and I want to learn everything from scratch. So that's why I'm here.
Good. Fantastic. So that really relieves me of any, burden of performance.
Brunal also says on the chat, I'm here as a clean slate, being a learner, happy to learn. And so I'm also acknowledging, Jayashree, that this is the highest number that you have had in a webinar till date. Okay,
wow.
participation. So you have really, intrigued people to come in. And so 28 is a large number for us to come.
Yes. So congratulations to all of us.
Thank you for doing this.
Okay. So now, since I'm new to Zoom, Rajat, now do I do the share screen thing?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Okay. Wait, I don't know. Something happened.
Yes, we are. Okay.
Are you able to see it?
We were. You have stopped share again. Yeah.
Sorry. Just a single click, right?
Yeah. Just choose that screen and then say share screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Right. Okay. So using TKI in coaching is something that we thought would be a good topic for today, and I think as coaches, as most of you and all of you, I'm supposing that tools come in handy, and of course, tools are finally tools, and how we use it is completely up to us. That is for sure. But more we know about some concepts, some theories, we also develop a scientific lens towards our own coaches, our own coaching clients, and that is why I think knowing little more about different tools helps. My again, of course, submission to you is, although we may, some of you, as somebody said, in MBTI or Firobi or TKI or whatever, or Belvin or DISC, whichever tool you could be certified in, I think you would be tempted to anyway administer that tool to the client, and also look at that tool, look at the client through the tool's eye. But I think we as coaches must always keep in mind that this is finally a tool, and let it be at the back of our mind, but we still cannot let it color our vision towards the client. I think that's my only submission, and I keep reminding myself that, and that's why I'm sharing that with you. So this is some little bit about my company. So Alchemy is the name of our company, and so we've got about 75 plus clients, about 14 years of existence so far. And when we say paper pencil instruments, 5,500 plus, it includes all these MBTI and so on, and some of the instruments by Uday Parikh and Pradeep Khanwala. About 11,000 plus beneficiary participants in different ways. Of course, we've been able to touch people's lives. And we are a team of senior professionals. So I could be one of the youngest one in the team. Everybody about 25 to 30 years of experience in the field, and then decided to take up training, consulting, or coaching because they had passion in leadership development. So that's only a little bit about me. Okay. Yeah. So this picture is, of course, my favorite picture because the golden showers, of course, beautiful flowers, and the path is always a representative of the path that we as coaches walk along with our coaching clients. And I always believe that in a metaphor that we are just fellow travelers when we are coaching our clients, and that exactly differentiates us from being a teacher or being a trainer or being a consultant. We are just fellow travelers, and this is a beautiful shaded path that we all wish to travel along with our coaches. So I'll walk you through the TKI model. So some of you, if you have even heard a little bit about the TKI model, what it means is it actually tells us about different modes of handling conflict, and there are costs and benefits associated with each of the conflict modes. So we will also talk about that. Cues and patterns as to when we actually are interacting with our client. How do I know that now I must actually maybe either administer the TKI or at least look at the client through the TKI lens? So what are some of the cues and patterns that we might be able to pick up when our client is talking? And then, of course, I think one important point for us is conflict mode is a choice. And like in any other psychometric instrument, we would say nothing is right or wrong and all answers are right. But at the same time, everything has its time and place, right? And we as people, whether as coaches or our coaching clients, we as people, when we know that using a specific conflict mode is our choice, how do we actually enable our client to, encourage our client to take that pause and reflect, and then go from this reaction to response? And these are some of the things that I thought we would just ponder over. And we would certainly have some time for questions, but if you have a burning question, please stop me wherever you think you just don't want me to go ahead unless we resolve that question. So please feel free to raise a question even in between. Right. So conflict is something I think, I don't know, somehow there's a negative connotation to this word, right? And if you would like to share with me, what are some of the feelings that come in our mind when we just even utter the word conflict? Can someone just tell me?
disagreement on some thought process.
Okay. Disagreement on a thought process.
Difference of opinions.
Difference of opinions.
Priya says irritation, Arvind says disagreement,
Right.
argument, traffic jam of opinions.
Correct.
Unpleasant disagreement.
Sorry?
Unpleasant disagreement. I'm reading from the chat.
Exactly. Right. So I think the irritation, the unpleasantness, the discomfort, the feeling of, this is not, maybe this is not the way I would like to interact with this person or this situation. I would just like to get out of that. Many of such feelings and emotions are associated with this word conflict. And at the same time, I think all of us experience conflict in every walk of life. So whether it is, that we are an organizational, we are an employee in an organization, or whether at home, right? With our children, with our spouses, and with our in-laws, with our friends, right? So I think conflict is something that, however unpleasant it may sound, and however unpleasant feelings and feelings of discomfort it may generate in our mind, it is something that we just cannot ignore, and we just cannot ignore the presence of conflict in our life. And the classic definition of conflict is situation in which the concerns of two people appear to be incomparable, right? So it is just that maybe you and I, we just want two different things, or we want the same thing, but we want two different paths. Or maybe we want the same thing, maybe the path is the same, but the time at which we want could be different, right? So there could be all sorts of dimensions on which the concerns of two people may appear to be incomparable. And that is the exact definition of conflict. Now, when we look at this, it will, as I said just now, it's so inevitable. It's just so inevitable, because people are people, and you and me are two different people, and therefore our concerns are almost always likely to be incomparable. And then what do we do when these concerns are incomparable? So what we are going to now look at is there are 5 different modes, and those modes are actually because of the 2 dimensions in which. So 2 by 2 is usually a very favorite model for all of us. I think anybody who has even a slight inclination towards model building, I think 2 by 2 is something that's the first thing that just pops up in our mind, and that is how the TKI model is, right? So we're just talking about actually only 2 axes. One is the axis of cooperativeness, and another is the axis of assertiveness. If you look at it carefully, both these words are coined very cleverly and carefully, in the sense that both of them have a positive connotation. So if you look at assertiveness, that's positive too. And if you look at cooperativeness, oh yeah, why? Who doesn't want to be known as a cooperative person, right? So both these words have positive connotations. And so cooperativeness in the context of the conflict definition means that, to what extent I'm actually looking at, to what extent am I able to give in so that somebody else's concerns are met, right? Because we're talking about a situation where our concerns might be incomparable or incompatible. And assertiveness is the extent to which I am willing to pursue my own concern at the cost of someone else's concern, right? And therefore, we actually get these 5 different modes of TKI along the 2 axes, right? So on the x-axis, you've got the cooperativeness, and on the y-axis, you've got the assertiveness. So obviously, from left to right, it goes from uncooperative to cooperative, and then from bottom to up, it goes from unassertive to assertive. So take a moment to look at these 5 boxes. So there is avoiding and accommodating, there is competing, there is compromising, and there is collaborating. And I'm not asking you to answer this question, but when you look at boxes, there's a possibility, and if you have never taken a TKI instrument, there's a possibility that when you look at these 5 boxes, one of the boxes just pops up at you, and you might think that, oh, I think this is the right box, or this looks beautiful, or this is me, right? And some other box might just come in front of your eyes, and you might feel, oh, this is my boss, or that's my subordinate, or this is my spouse, or that's my mother-in-law, as the case may be. I mean, whoever is the person of interest in your current life, right? I mean, just keep that in your mind as to which is the box that just looks appealing out of the 5 boxes, right? What I'm going to do is, like, the words now. So the cooperativeness and assertiveness, the 2 dimensions, the names of the dimensions look very appealing and inviting. But when you look at these 5 boxes, each one of us will have some opinion about how that word looks like. So someone might think, oh wow, accommodating, that means that's a great person. And somebody might look at avoiding and say, oh, I don't know, who wants to avoid anything? And somebody might look at competing and say, oh, wow, that's the way to go in life, and so on, right? I think everybody likes to believe that, I am a collaborator. Nobody likes to think that, one is not a collaborator. So collaboration, I think, intuitively looks like the most attractive box. Right? I'm going to give you, let's say, a single line description of each of these 5 boxes, right? So, for example, if you're too far out on the x-axis, too much on the cooperativeness axis, what this means is you are likely to go to a great extent in sacrificing your own interest in order that the other person is able to get his or her interest fulfilled, right? So that means the extreme right is the accommodating one. And so you might call this unassertive and more cooperative, right? So low on y-axis and high on x-axis. So mostly, right? I mean, if somebody just calls you up and says, hey, I would just like to, come and talk to you for 10 minutes without even asking, is this the right time? And you might be, in the middle of something, and maybe this is not the right time. But even then, default answer is, oh yeah, it would be my pleasure. You're most welcome, right? So my pleasure, most welcome, be my guest. This is usually an indication that you're using an accommodating style. Now, whether you should be using it in that particular instance or not, we will come to that later. However, my pleasure is usually the line that people use when they're demonstrating accommodating style, right? And similarly, I mean, when somebody is trying to use the avoiding style or demonstrating the avoiding style with respect to conflict, what do you think this person would do? What do you think this person might say? Anyone?
No,
Look, I'm busy.
Sorry? Look, I'm busy
Good.
right now.
Yeah.
I'm busy right now. Okay.
Or I would have loved to meet you, but and then an excuse following that.
And then, yes, okay.
Or he will maintain and literally withdraw from the situation.
Fantastic. Yeah. So just make some excuse. I mean, it could be if we are all in the room and we want to, I mean, if I want to avoid the conflicting situation that seems to be arising in the room, I might just make some excuse and say, I have an important call to make. And I might just leave that room if we are all face to face. If somebody calls me, or if I'm expecting a call from a presumably irate client, I might just tell my colleague, you pick up the call when that call comes, and tell him that my boss is not around. Tell him my boss is not around, right? So later, right? Not now, later is the usual default response or words that a person with avoiding style might use, correct? So not now, later, right? So can we look at it tomorrow, right? Do we have to resolve it today? Is this do we have the deadline tonight? No, then, let's just get back on this topic once again and then talk about it. So later, not now, later is the sentence that a person might be using when he or she is avoiding the conflict. If the person is using the competing style, typically, and I'm sure most of us would have at least one or more, if not more, such people around us, and we will say, oh, that we would talk about that person saying, oh, for him it is my way or highway, right? So it's got to be my way. is usually the line that a competing person or a person using competing mode of conflict handling would usually use, right? So my way is the right way. I have given a lot of thought about it, right? I have done this in the past. We have tried other things, but only this thing works. This is the right way, is usually the way a person would say when he or she is using competing as a mode of conflict, right? So stubbing all the other opinions and ideas. When somebody is using compromise, usually the line is, let's make a deal. I mean, we may be politically savvy and politically correct in not using the word deal, but we may use some other word. But what it means is, I will walk a couple of steps forward. You also walk a couple of steps forward. I will let go of some of my concerns, and you also let go of some of your concerns. Correct? So let's make a deal. Let's make a pact to make. That's the compromising way of handling conflict. However, if it is collaborative, usually two heads are better than one, is the language, is the sentence that the person might use when he or she is using collaborating as the mode of handling conflict. So there is a kind of recognition that it is not you versus me. It is not 50% you and 50% me, but you bring something, I bring in something, and let's build on each other's competencies. Let's cover up for each other's weaknesses, and let's build something far greater than what we could if we were to build it alone, right? So usually two heads are better than one is the line that is indicative of collaborating as the conflict handling mode. I'm going to take a moment's pause here, and if you have anything to say or ask about these 5 styles right now, please go ahead and ask.
So, Jayashree, if you can kind of also talk about in this context situations where avoiding is not necessarily the wrong thing to do,
Right.
but it's
Oh yes.
Yeah, to manage that conflict at that time, it's actually the right thing to do.
Absolutely, and that you are absolutely right, and that is something that we are going to talk about a little later, because to some people, and again, avoidance, as you because you're pointing it out, I'm just saying it right here. Avoiding does not have a very positive connotation, right? I mean, we look at avoidance as something that is I mean, that's not a good thing to do by a strong-willed person. However, like you very rightly said, and to give you just a very trivial example, you walking on the road, and there's a man who's drunk, who's completely drunk, not in his senses, and he picks up a fight with you. Now, that's not the time at which you will make a compromise. That's not the time at which you will accommodate. There is no way you could collaborate, because he's not in his senses, and you can't compete, and you can't kind of logically explain that you know better, because he's not in that he's not in that state even to understand that. And therefore, in that case, avoiding, that means let's talk about it later, or just changing your path and walking away, would actually be the right thing to do. And that's a trivial example I'm saying, but sometimes, and I will just take right. So now we're talking about the costs and benefits of conflict modes, and that is where so who is this? I'm sorry, I didn't get the name. Who asked the question?
Sushanta.
Oh, Sushanta, sorry. So yeah, so I'm hoping that your question will get answered here, because there are costs and there are benefits of using any of the styles, and we're not really saying that this is the right style, although one might look better than the other in given situations.
So, Jayashree, Abhilasha is
Yes.
asking, does one person have one predominant mode of conflict resolution, or does it change based on situation?
Excellent. Yeah, so I will just go back. Abhilasha, you are right. We do have our default style of conflict handling. And I know, where does that default style come from, you may ask. So, so this being an OPP instrument, this does have some correlations with the MBTI type and also your Fairobi score range. So typically, if you are an MBTI type which is more accommodating, and I'm just taking one example, like you could be a feeling person, then there is a likelihood that you might have accommodating as your default style. And then of course what happens is, once we like using one particular style and we keep using that again and again, that becomes a habit, and that becomes our default way of responding to any conflict. Now can we adapt to different styles? That is exactly what we are expected to do as alive human beings, right? I mean, otherwise it is like a machine response. I mean, I see a conflict and I just use my default style. However, if I am a person who's here and now and is able to judge which might be the right style in this particular context, then I will be able to adapt to certain extent, and with more practice to a greater extent. So yes, we have a default style, and we also have an opportunity to adapt to a style that is most appropriate for a situation. Does that answer your question, Abhilasha?
Okay, thanks, it does. Then Poonam also puts up a question saying, you mentioned that these conflict modes aren't necessarily positive or negative, as the word suggests. Could you give a couple of examples?
Yes, so I think I'll just walk you through the costs and benefits, and during that, if I can give you some examples. Is that all right?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, right. So the one that I am giving you now are the benefits of these specific conflict modes. Right? So accommodating is that conflict mode where you are very cooperative and you are unassertive. So what is it that you will gain in this? You will gain harmony in relationships, and of course there could be multiple gains, but I've just picked up the top gain for every style, right? So see, there is a possibility, for example, that you and your friend, I'm just using a personal life example, you and your friend get into a conflict situation, and you might think that your solution is the right solution, or this is the movie that we must go and watch, and that is the time that we must go, and so on. However, more often than not, you might just say, okay, whatever you want to say, whatever you want to see, let's just go watch that movie. Because in that particular relationship, winning is not exactly that you're looking for. What you're looking for is maintaining and nurturing that relationship. So when harmony is most important in a particular situation, accommodating the other person's concerns and sometimes even pushing our concerns behind is something that will work best. We might do it for our children. We might sometimes do it for our loved ones. We might actually sometimes do it for our team members. When we know that challenging is going to break probably the trust or the harmony in the team, we might actually accommodate people's concerns. Right? So that's accommodating. When to use avoiding, like Sushanta asked, right? When to use avoiding style. Sometimes there is threat. Now let me tell you also that avoiding is best used as a short-term style, right? Avoiding cannot in any case become a long-term default mode, right? If that will be overuse of avoiding. However, in the short term, when we want to run away from threat, or when we just want to avoid a situation because we know that at this point, if I handle, this is just going to burst up like a volcano, I have to give it some time, and I will want to come back to the issue at a later point in this day or this week or this month. For now, I want to avoid it because this is not the best time. Sometimes the tempers are running high and people are just not willing to listen to each other. It is best to say, gentlemen or lovely ladies, we are not going anywhere with this discussion right now. Let's just break off for now and we meet tomorrow again at 9:30. So away from the threat of actual threat, like I said, running away from a drunkard. So actual threat, or also the threat of breaking the whole pact, correct? So instead of letting that pact break, or there would be no concurrence at all, you would rather sleep over it, avoid it for a while. But that cannot be a long-term strategy. It's a great short-term strategy in certain situations. Competing, right? Now, I think all of us, whatever may be our default mode of handling conflict, when our very core inner values are violated, when our values are threatened, I think competing, that means standing up for ourselves, is something that that's a great thing to do, right? I mean, if I accommodate when my core value is threatened, then I'm not doing the right thing. So especially something that is extremely important to us, right? Extremely important to us, when that gets threatened, when that gets violated, it is important for us to use competing as a conflict mode. So standing up for self is something that that's a benefit of using competing. Compromising, right? Sometimes you might know that, okay, I might lose out on something if I accept this solution, right? The other person also knows that he or she is also going to lose out on something if he or she accepts this midway solution, right? So compromising is like a midway solution, and it increases speed, because let me tell you, when we go to the next mode, which is collaborating, wherein we are listening very attentively to each other, we are trying to see how we can, really patch up some of the pieces and create a larger jigsaw puzzle. When we all this needs time, correct? And every time the client situation, that is, if we are working in an organizational scenario, every time the client situation or any other situation may not grant us the luxury of time. When we do not have luxury of time, and when we want to expedite the things, compromise is the way to go, right? However, if we have time, right, or we have compromised in the past, but we know that that is not the most optimal solution, right? So mind well, avoiding and compromising are essentially short-term solutions, right? So avoid when you know this is not going to happen right now, this is not the best time. And compromising, you know that you don't have time right now, so you compromise, but you keep that at the back of your mind, somewhere file it away, saying that, okay, we have reached a solution right now. However, we need to get back to it as soon as the current fire is doused, right? So it is almost like, I mean, if some of you are in the software industry, it's almost like, developing a short-term patch for your client, wherein it is just taking care of the fire that is right now burning. But you also know that you need to probably go back, look at your product and see, what can I do better in the next release, so that I don't have to come to this compromise kind of situation again in the next release cycle, correct? So collaborating is about maybe working once again on the situation in which we compromised, because speed was necessary then, but now we have some time on hand. Similarly, of course, sometimes when we are planning, right, when we are planning, we have time on our hand, and that's not the time to expedite things. When we are brainstorming, we have time, and by using that time intelligently and with an open-mindedness, we create a win-win. So essentially, if we were to look at the win-lose, and I've not put one more 2x2, but if we were to look at the win-lose kind of matrix, accommodating is I lose, you win, right? Nobody loses, nobody wins, but nothing happens, right? It's like a zero sum. Competing is I win, you lose, right? Compromising is you win half, I win half, but both of us also lose 50%. And collaborating is a win-win situation, wherein both of us get to get something from the solution, and we are creating something bigger and better for both of us. Right? So Abhilasha, does this now answer your question?
She says yes, it does. Jeshri, I have another question. So, what is the cost of collaborating?
Cost of all these, right?
No, just collaborating. While we are saying, it seems that
cost
there's
of
only
collaborating is time and energy. Collaborative is time and energy. Okay. It does require time and correct. Sure. And every time we may not have, because it is one way to say, okay, energy is it's there and we have to create within ourselves, but yes, it does require a lot of time and energy. And so cost of accommodating, so the square that you see now, these are all costs. Of course, the cost of accommodating, that means this is for me. For example, if I am using accommodating style, on one hand, I am gaining harmony, and maybe I am known as a kind person. People will say, oh, wow, she's so kind, and she's so gentle, and she's so soft, right? So that's the benefit. But the cost is that I might often be left with a feeling that I am getting exploited. People are taking me for granted, and people are not even considering my concern when they are talking about doing something. So I feel exploited. That's the I not just I feel, but I do get exploited, correct? So people don't value my time, people don't value my effort, and so on. So that is the cost of me being accommodating. That is a self being accommodating. The cost of being avoiding is, of course, delays, right? I mean, what could have of course there is a benefit, and there are situations in which you would use avoiding, but if you don't have to use avoiding and you're still using because it is your default mode, you're going to cause delays, right? And I mean, the example that I gave you told your junior, tell the client when he calls, tell him I'm not here, I'm busy in some other meeting. If there is a burning fire, just because you avoid, that client is not going to keep quiet. The client might reach out to your boss or someone else who could give him solution. And for that person, he cannot avoid delay. But what you are losing in this is that you are losing face, right? I mean, you are losing your image, and the client thinks, oh, maybe he's not my go-to person. So one is delay in getting what you anyway wanted, and second is also your own image and people's perceptions about you might get hampered when you overuse avoiding as a style. Competing, of course, negotiation deadlock, right? Because you just are so, I would say you're just putting your foot down in the meeting, and you're saying, hey, I have thought about all these, and this is the way we should go, and this is what works. I'm quite convinced. And there is somebody else who's probably also as strong as you, and that person says, no, but that is the way to go, and it worked in my organization, my BU, whatever, right? And then there is a negotiation deadlock, because unless one person takes a step back and is willing to give something away of his own concern or his own solution, this is never going to be solved, right? So sometimes in this situation, and you might have seen it even in organizations or in your clients situations, there's a possibility then there is a super boss, there is a boss who comes into play, and believe me, this is more common than you might think. This is almost like an adult solving children's quarrels, and this is what happens even in organizations when there are two people who are using competing styles very strongly. The conflict just does not get resolved, and somebody else who's in a power position actually has come in and resolve the conflict, correct? Because competing is all about power. So there's a possibility that there's a negotiation deadlock. If you're extremely powerful and the people in the room are maybe junior, maybe inexperienced, maybe too accommodating, right? Then they'll just get so overwhelmed by your style that they'll just never ask any questions, and you will miss out on the ideas that they might have contributed. Compromising, of course, speed is something that is the benefit, but it is a superficial understanding. We must always remember that sometimes, I mean, when we are compromising, or when somebody says to you, okay, let's just do it this way, there's a possibility that the understanding is only at the first layer, superficial layer, and people are not actually going deeper into considering the wider ramifications of whatever we are doing. And of course, collaborating, as Rajat asked, the flip side of being collaborative all the time is, you are using a lot of time and energy. And therefore, see, every mode, although it is good in certain situations, certainly not good in some other situations, overuse of any mode is going to, cost you something. That is the whole idea of this blue square, correct? So if you think you are a collaborator, and every time you are trying to collaborate, I don't know whether some of you have read some of the child rearing books, right? I mean, if a 3-year-old is arguing with you in terms of, why should she wash her hands after coming home from a sandpit, that's not the time to be collaborative. That's not the time to kind of build on each other's ideas. That's the time to just use competing and say shut up and just do as I say. So we need to also choose our battles. Where do we want to focus our time and energy? Right? How was it doing on time?
We got 10
We
minutes
are
left.
already 7:21. Oh, we got on 10 minutes. We started late. Anyway, right. Okay. So cues and patterns, and this is about so now bringing this knowledge of TKI into our business, right? That is our coaching, what we do on a day-to-day basis. Correct. So as of course all of you are experienced coaches, I think we know that we look at people and we know something is happening, and we are also maybe mentally or actually recording things that they say, right? So if your client, so I would like to pose you a question. What would give you a clue that your client is overusing competing style? Anyone of you?
I'm actually working with someone right now, as in I'm coaching this person, and every conversation, every issue that comes up, it's all about how everyone else is a fool and what I'm saying is right. I'm guessing that's the competing style there, because everywhere it's all about my way or the highway.
Right. And sometimes if these people have gone a little further in self-awareness, sometimes the client might also come to you saying, like, this is something that you have spotted, right? My way or the highway. Sometimes the client might also come to you saying, hey, I keep saying my door is always open. I keep saying that, I am open to new suggestions and, new ideas. Why don't people never contribute whenever I call a meeting, right? So, but if you actually, have to end that meeting even once, you will see that the way he or she comes across in the meeting is that, within first few minutes, any dialogue is over. Right? And then, my suggestion would be, and I think I don't know exactly what is the model, Rajat, I think you follow, but understanding is that when we are trying to set up ecologically good goals for the client, there would be something that will come up about his personal life too. So look for patterns. There's a possibility that a client might say, who has a teenage daughter, might say that, oh my God, every evening I get to hear the same thing from my daughter. This is something that, oh dad, you don't understand, or you never listen to me, or something like that. So pick up patterns as to what is happening in different areas of life of this particular client, and suggest whether there is a possibility of doing something different. Similarly, of course, if the person is accommodating, you will very clearly see this person often complaining, that, oh, I went to that meeting, but somehow, I had this meeting with my stakeholder who was traveling here from overseas, but I am left, and this one client has actually said this to me. I'm, feeling that, oh, even in that 1 hour meeting, I don't think I got what I wanted. Now, you had that 1 hour, you also had your data, but you were not able, you were too accommodative, right? And I'll also see that, this person will pick up phone when his spouse calls, or is not able to say no when somebody else just barges inside his cubicle, and that this person is demonstrating an accommodating style as a default mode of conflict. So I think our job as coaches is to gently encourage people to see what can they do differently if they are finding that this is not the style that is taking them anywhere all the time, right? So I'm just using a little bit of, how many of you are also familiar with NLP? Some of you? So I don't know, I mean, I'm just
some of them might be.
Some of them, right? So I'm just sneaking in a bit of NLP detail here, right? So the picture that I showed you first, so this person, you are asking him to recall a situation where he felt that his interests were not fulfilled, or you thought that people did not listen to him, or you thought that the feedback is that he's too aggressive, right? So this is his left, correct? So it's a visual recall. Whereas when you look at this person, the next picture that you're seeing, this is where you're asking this person to kind of, imagine how would this situation look like if you were to use another style. So I would suggest that if in consecutive conversations, if you think that this is the pattern that is emerging, it would be good for you to set up a TKI for your client. Now, is TKI freely available? I think there is a free TKI available if you go to Google, but that will, and that's your choice. I'm not saying that you must buy TKI or whatever, but if you buy TKI, you get a percentile score for this person. Whereas if you do the freely available TKI, you just get what might be this person's default style, and are there at least some occasions on which this person is using any other style. Generally get a feel of, because it's a 30 question questionnaire, you will generally get a feel of, out of these 30 situations, how often is this person using which style. So it's your choice as a coach to either set up a formal online. This is only available online when you buy the original instrument. However, otherwise, if it is a free instrument, then you will get a key and the instrument. You could just print it and administer it as a paper pencil instrument. I leave it to you. But once you get the default, yes, please. Once you get the default style, then it is this is the question that you would ask, that if you were to your client, that if you're not satisfied or if you're not completely happy with this default style, can you imagine situations in which you could use another style, and what might be the outcome? I suppose that this might work, and people will change, but people will change slowly, as we all know. So I think it is all about us finding out cues and patterns and deciding whether to use this. If you already have the MBTI analysis, or if you have the FIRO-B, you might just have also an inkling into what might this person's default style could be. If this person is really very scientifically oriented, you might want to use the instrument itself. All good. 2 minutes. Okay. Now, this is something that was not on the agenda, but I thought this is important. Again, this is one of my favorite pictures for coaching, because again, it's like a fellow journeyman. We have walked some path, and a bench is where we are sitting together as a coach and coachee, where again, we are on the same platform, right? So how does the coach's conflict handling style impact the coaching conversations is something that you might want to ponder over for yourself, right? So because whatever tools we use on our clients, we should be, and we must actually first use those on us, correct? And we must see where we are. And so for example, if as a coach have accommodating as your default style, then you might be giving into too many requests from your coaches, for example, for changing the timing, for canceling meetings, or sometimes with your clients. Finally, I mean, if we are charging our clients for the coaching meeting, sometimes negotiating our contracts may not be your greatest strength if you have accommodating as your style. If you have accommodating as a style, there's a possibility that in the urge to become a kind coach, we might not be able to demonstrate the direct communication, that particular competency, the ICF competency. Whereas if we are too much onto competing, we are too direct and might lose on our sensitivity as a coach. Also, of course, avoidance will mean, and let me tell you that I have also gone through some such situations where there was a conflict coaching that was required, and it took me a lot of time to actually get to that point where we are actually addressing conflict between two people, because I just thought this is going to become too disharmonious if I even utter the word conflict. So I think it's a learning journey for all of us too, in terms of what is my conflict handling style, how does that impact my coaching style, and constantly be aware of that, and be aware of what are the cues that my coachee is presenting to me, and can I it's all about balancing. So can I kind of make this coachee aware that conflict mode is a choice, and reaction to response will happen only when our coachee is able to take a pause and be here and now and be intelligent in responding to the situation. So I think that's about it from my side. Any
Sure.
feedback?
So can you stop the share?
Shall I? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, please. Done.
Awesome.
So, Jayashree, apart from the coaching aspects, in our daily situations at work or with friends or in a family, etc., while there is a kind of a probably inclination or tendency, a greater tendency to be of a particular type in terms of managing conflicts. How would the shifting between the 5 dimensions that you spoke about, right? In managing the conflict, how does that help? I mean, as a coach or something, moving from avoidance to accommodating, and do you come across things like, for example, people who can be, they have different people in their lives, and so they are different. They use different styles for different people because they mean differently to them.
So if people are using different styles with different people, that's great. I mean, that's great in the sense that if they are able to sail through different styles. But mostly my experience tells me that there is always that default style that runs as a lining to whatever your interactions are, to whoever you are interacting with. Unless, like for example, when you go to work and you wear a very tight mask, and I'm sure that's also not comfortable. But if you wear a very tight mask, then you could become, you could adopt a different style. You need to see how stressful or stress-free is that for you. If you ask me what is the journey, and it's very interesting when you see people whose default style is accommodating, when their core values are threatened, they go straight to competing. And you will see that, people who are otherwise very soft, gentle, kind, they just become extremely aggressive when that little spot in their brain or heart is touched, which should not be touched, correct? But otherwise, generally people traverse through the middle mode, that is the compromise. So for somebody to become, from accommodating to competing, it is difficult, but from accommodating to compromise and then to collaborative. So that's usually the path. Usually the middle ground is first attained, and then we go to collaboration. Yes, so collaboration is the recommended style when we have time. When we don't have time, then that's not a recommended style.
Yep. Thanks.
Hi Jayashree, this is Mrunal here. This is a curious question.
I have read your name because I think the mails from Mumbai chapter come from you or something.
Oh, the ICF Mumbai chapter, I used to send mail. Yes. Okay, nice to know that. Thank you. Okay, so the curious question is, let's say I'm not talking about myself, but this is a case where one person who's a boss and who sees that his subordinate has a certain style. And let's say the subordinate is, the boss wants the subordinate to understand probably that that's the style and then probably become aware of it. The thing is, if I ask you what could be an approach you would suggest if you were to do it, this thing. So would it be, so what's the approach? Would you suggest directly that this is a conflict management thing, you can take a TKI assessment and realize it? Or you have an intention that the person realizes it, but what could be the approach to make the person realize, where that person is not aware of the conflict management style, etc.? How would you approach it?
Correct. Okay. So I think one is, if you're talking about a boss and a subordinate, but a relationship is always two-way, right? It is not just the subordinate style that is a problem. It is it's the two styles, the boss's style and the subordinate style, right?
Yes.
I mean, it is always the two styles that come in conflict with each other, or in tandem with each other. So my suggestion in this case would be, of course, if you are the coach, get both of them in the room and spell out the situation and also spell out the possibility, in the sense that there is a possibility of a much better, I would say much more pleasant and more productive conversation. And hence, I would suggest that administer the instrument to both, not just to one person. It is very convenient for bosses to say my subordinate has a problem. But problem is never at only one end.
Okay, sure. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Jayashree, a question I have comes from a thought. We talk about teams and effectiveness of teams, right? And conflicts in teams are far more complex than just between two individuals, because the dynamics are far more complex. How can an understanding of the TKI process help us in terms of team effectiveness building?
Right. So, yeah, you are right. And I think it is most effective when it is just two people or just a group of few people. But if it is a large group, my suggestion, and this is just, I'm not prescribing anything, I'm just saying from my own experience, is that this is as just one standalone tool, this may not be sufficient. This may not be sufficient, and we will need to support it with a slightly deeper tool, like for example an MBTI. I think my always, I mean, when there are when we know that there are mismatching styles in the team, MBTI gives a better and deeper perspective to that, and then we can add this. So
this
I
can
would
be
not
an
suggest
additional resource, probably.
Yes, correct. So if you are good, I mean, if you like Belbin, then maybe Belbin and this, or so this is good in combination with something.
Yeah,
this is my experience.
So it could be a brilliant tool for team coaching as well, because you can talk about the various kind of people working together with a different style of TKI, like saying an accommodated working with a competing guy, and how the relationship happens between the two people when they are working together, right? So it can be very interesting to coach them through it.
Using these concepts at a meta level conversation and team coaching could be very, very useful, probably.
Okay. So Abhilasha says, Jayashree, thank you for a very informative session. Learned something new today that I can use for myself and my clients. Priya says, thanks, Jayashree. So yeah, thanks a lot for a very practical, insightful session. Great learning evening, Aditi. Okay. So let me, while others are typing it, the thanks for this. So thank you so much, Jayashree, for doing this. It was very, very interesting. Loved the session, loved your energy as well in the session. Could see the passion coming out of around TKI. And so I'll be posting this within our YouTube channel as well. And I'll share the link with you. It's typically unlisted. We don't list it for searches on YouTube, but you can share the link with whoever you wish to. And if you have given a webinar on something like this, right?
Oh, fantastic. Right.
Thank you so much for doing this, coming in, and we loved every moment.
Would love to interact more. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jayashree.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Jayashree.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Bye,
Thank you,
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Jayashree. Thanks, Jayashree. Bye-bye.